So we are in a series on transformation, and I want to start by asking you a question. Are there areas in your life where you would like to see change? Are there any areas at all in your life where you'd like to see change? That's what transformation is about. Transformation is about, yeah, please, if you don't mind. Just take it somewhere. I just don't want to trip on it. I don't know where it goes. I just didn't want it here on my little stand. So transformation is all about change over time. And I'm sure many of you who, when you first became Christian, experienced very significant transformation early on. Can anybody attest to that? But then over time, we can stop changing. We can kind of plateau in certain areas of our lives. And this is natural. This is not necessarily a bad thing. But then there may still be changes yet for you, even after you've been a Christian for 40 years. Even after you've been a Christian for decades, there could be still more transformations. And I don't think God's done with you yet until you're dead. I think even right before you die, you could still experience transformation, right? And certainly we've heard stories about incredible things that people will do or change on their deathbed, right? So don't wait till then. Let's experience transformation in our lives. Last time we talked about joy. Next time we're going to talk about love. So as it turns out, the super nerds who study the brain and understand how change works say that you have to have joy and you have to have love. These are necessary ingredients for you to experience transformation, positive transformation over time. But the third is group identity. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning, is group identity. And that's something you might not even think of. You might not really have it as part of your Christian consciousness, like, oh, I'm really working on my group identity today. You know, but I think it is something that is kind of a cheat code, and it can really help you in huge ways develop your character. Your character is what you do when you're stressed out, when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when your defenses are down, and you just do something. That's your character. And that is what we want to change. That is what we want to become more like Christ, is your character. I remember when I first went to college, I went to a State University of New York school, or as we call them around here, SUNY. Except for Albany, because it's special. That's the University at Albany. But I didn't go to Albany, so I went to a SUNY school, and I fell in with a group. I wasn't very good at managing my time. I didn't know I was supposed to manage my time. It's not crazy, but I didn't get a planner. I didn't keep track of assignments. I kind of handed things in haphazardly. I did very poorly, and I fell in with a group of frat guys, frat boys, but I was smart enough not to join the frat because they torture you. And I was like, nah, I'll go to the parties, but I don't want to eat peanut butter mixed with dog food, and I don't want to have a goldfish swim around in my mouth, and I don't want to get dropped off in the middle of nowhere and be forced to find my way back naked. So I'm not going to join. My roommate did. He joined the frat. I watched them torture him. I said, I'm just going to go to the parties. Anyhow, I did very poorly in school. I ended up bombing out, actually. I got academically dismissed from my first college. Very serious cause of shame in my life back then. And my mom grabbed me by the ear and said, "You're going to Hudson Valley, son." And she drove me in the minivan to Hudson Valley Community College. She signed me up, and she's like, "You're going to go to this school, whether you like it or not." And she paid for it, and I said, "All right." But what really interesting thing happened at Hudson Valley for me is that I didn't like morning classes, so I signed up for mostly the night classes, and I fell in with these people, these really interesting people. They were middle-aged, and I was doing engineering, so we had literally one woman in the whole program. And she got in the newspaper for being a woman. And it was like, wow, look at that, a woman. So I didn't really have many female friends in college at that point. And these guys were middle-aged. they were already working a career, most of them in the trades. They had a family, and they would take like 1 or 2 classes at a time, and they were serious. They were not playing. Like when I was at the other school, my first school, everyone was playing. Like there might have been serious people, but I never found them. At Hudson Valley, I fell in with this crew of older guys that were like, yo, this is my life. This is my one chance. I'm going to start my second career. I'm going to level up. I'm going to take care of my family. And those are the people that I spent my time with, and we studied together in the library. And wouldn't you know it, I started to get good grades. And I ended up going to RPI after that for engineering because I did well at Hudson Valley, and I transferred over to RPI. And when I was at RPI, I said to myself, who are those people here? Who are those people here that are going to work hard? Who are those people? And some from Hudson Valley were also at RPI, and so I hung out with those ones. But then what I discovered is that the immigrants were those people. You know, Sandy knows what I'm talking about. She worked at RPI when I was a student there. A number of people in the church actually were working there, which was kind of weird because, like, you see people at their job, you're like, wait, do I know you? And she was, and Ruby was there in the ID office. I was going to get my ID, and I ran into Ruby, and I'm like, wow, I've like known you my whole life. I guess this is where you work. You know? And there's like 5 people at the college when I went there that were part of our church. It was kind of cool. But what I discovered is that the Pakistanis, the Indians, the Chinese, people from all these like Asian countries, in my program at least, were the ones that were like studying, and they would study at the library till midnight, some nights till 2 in the morning. They'd work every single problem, you know, in a group. And I was like, you know, I know I'm white, but like, can I join your group? And they're like, sure, come on, join my group. And they taught me a lot, and I taught them. We taught each other. You know, it was group work. And because I fell in with that group, I did really well. And I got all A's, except for once I got a B in professional development, whatever that is. So, and anarchism. I got a B in anarchism, but the rest I got A's. So I guess I'm not anarchistic enough or developed. Those are kind of like opposites too, right? If you're an anarchist, you're probably not professional, whatever. Anyhow, I ended up doing really well. And what I had stumbled upon was the power of group pressure or peer pressure, or like having a group identity. I didn't consciously say to myself, I'm going to work really hard on this assignment. No, I just fell in with a group of people that's what we did. And it was like easy. Not the work, but like deciding. I didn't decide. I was just doing what the group did. You see what I'm saying? And that's the power of group identity. It has a powerful effect on us, and it's often overlooked in Christianity. I believe that group identity is a cheat code to transformation. So long as the group you're with is Christian, or like trying to do things that are Christian, this will help you to transform. Michael Hendricks, in his book, The Other Half of Church, he writes, our brains were designed to respond to group identity in order to help us act like our people. Our right brain contains the control center that interprets our group identity and uses it to shape our inner character. The orbital prefrontal cortex on the right side of my brain behind my eye is dominant for integrating my current situation in life with who I am in real time. Every 1/6 of a second. Isn't that incredible? So 6 times a second, on your right side of your brain, behind your eye, there is some sort of hardware that is pinging the outside world 6 times a second, saying, am I fitting in? Are these my people? Am I behaving the way that I'm supposed to be behaving in this context? This is all just built in. You don't have to think about it. It tries to answer the question, who am I? How do my people act now? If my control center is working smoothly, my circumstances are integrated with my group identity. I spontaneously act with joy and peace. Don't you want that? Spontaneously acting with joy and peace? Man, best part of that is spontaneous. It's not like, I got to be joyful here. It's more just like joy and peace. If my control center desynchronizes, I forget who I am and how to connect with those around me. I stop acting like myself. Even though I am a Christian, I stop acting like one. My brain has cramped. I no longer act with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. If I am not part of a high joy, loving community with a strong group identity, I will not know how to change my behavior. My own willpower will be insufficient to prevent me from acting in non-Christian ways. This response happens faster than conscious thought. It is my reflex reaction to distress. For example, if I lash out in anger, the effective strategy to change this flaw in my character is not to try harder next time it happens. Instead, I must focus on changing my instantaneous reflex reactions when under distress. Again, this is not done by direct willpower. We define character as our embedded automatic responses to our relational environment, our instantaneous behavior that flows naturally from our heart. So I don't know how much of that you got, but simply put, there is some God-designed hardware in your brain that is constantly trying to fit in with the people that are around you. And this can change who you are over time without you trying to do anything or without you realizing it. It just works on its own. Okay? Please take your Bible and go to Joshua chapter 2. So what I'm trying to tell you, and this blew my mind as I was reading this book some months ago and decided that we really need to do a sermon series on this. This blew my mind because this is how you experience transformation in your life in ways that have been stubborn to change. There are some areas of your life where you went on a fast and then you were able to overcome the sin. Or you had an accountability partner and then, because of that person's help, you were able to get over something. But there are other areas of your life that are stubborn, that are persisting in sin, and you want to get rid of them. You want to find freedom, but you've tried everything. You had this little self-help book, you did this plan and you did that plan, and it didn't work. So, here's what I am suggesting. Let's consider group identity. It's powerful and it can transform your life. The question you have to ask yourself is, who are your people? Are they helping or hurting you living for God? I know you can be in a group of sinners that are all in the midst of sin, and you can be strong and you can resist. I know that. But I also know that it's limited how long you can be strong, and it's limited how long you can resist, because you're not Jesus, and I'm not Jesus. Now, Jesus could sit with the sinners all day, every day, and still be strong and resist. The Messiah, of course, right? But you're not the Messiah. I'm not the Messiah. We have limitations, right? So what's really helpful to us is, you want to be friends with non-Christians. That's important. You're never going to reach anybody if you're not friends with any non-Christians, right? But and we all have non-Christian family and coworkers and stuff like that. But I'm saying, are you intentionally making time to spend time with Christians too? And if you're not, then your influences are going to shape you over time in a non-Christian way. Joshua chapter 2 tells us the story of Rahab. I want to look at 3 examples with you: Rahab, Ruth, and Paul the apostle. Okay? Rahab is an interesting case. Look at Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, 'Go view the land, especially Jericho.' So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab and spent the night there." The Bible does not make a comment about this. I'm not going to make a comment about this, other than just to say, as your pastor, don't go spend the night at a prostitute's house. It's just, it's not, this is going to be an exception, okay? We're just going to call it an exception, because it did have a happy ending. All right, verse 2. "The king of Jericho was told, 'Some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land.' Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, 'Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out the whole land.' Verse 4, "But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, "True, the men came to me, but I do not know where they came from. And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you can overtake them." Verse 6, she had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way to Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. So what we have here, just taking it from the perspective of Rahab, is a woman who's taking a huge risk. She's taking a huge risk because she's got these outsiders, and she is lying for them, and she's protecting them. She's a Canaanite. They're Israelites. They have different group identities. They worship different gods. They have different laws, different values. And yet she looks at these outsiders and she says, I'm gonna stick out my neck for them. Why? Look at verse 8. Before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that Yahweh," that when it says the Lord there, that's all capitals, that's the name of God. She knows the name of the Israelite God. This is interesting. That's not well known at this time in history. She would know the name of her God, Baal, and his consort, Asherah. And, he may know Dagon, because that's in the West. They worship Dagon, right? Why does she know Yahweh? Verse 8, before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that Yahweh has given you the land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how Yahweh dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. Yahweh, your God, is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below." Isn't that incredible? She's supposed to be an unbeliever. She's supposed to be an outsider. She's a pagan. And yet she's got faith in Yahweh that this is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Isn't that pretty cool to see? I think we have to be careful, just as a side point, we have to be careful saying all X's are damned, right? Just because somebody's not part of this church or doesn't share exactly our beliefs or, is living on the other side of the world, we're not their judge. God's their judge. God had reached this woman, a prostitute, in a foreign city. And she heard it wasn't the good news for her, it was the bad news, because she was among the people to be destroyed. But she believed. It's incredible. Verse 12. "Now, since I have dealt kindly with you," she's talking to the spies, "since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by Yahweh that you in turn will deal kindly with my family." Aha! Now we get the reason, the motive is clear. Your God is giving you this land. We're in this land. This is going to be war. This is going to be a war zone. I protected you. You protect me. Now we get what's going on. Her motive, verse 13, "that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to me, and deliver our lives from death." The men said to her, "Our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when Yahweh gives us the land." So here we learn why she did it. She heard about this God. She knew he was powerful. She realized he had given the land. And you know what she said? "I'm switching sides. I'm switching sides." I think it's a smart move. It's a smart move. She acted to save herself and her whole family. And she began the process to switch group identity. She's like, you know what? I'd like to be an Israelite. I'd like to join you guys. That's what she started to move in that direction. Chapter 6, go with me to chapter 6, verse 15. So the spies get home, and they tell Joshua what's up, and Joshua develops a plan with the people. Joshua is the general. He's the commander. They're going to march on Jericho, the city where Rahab lives. In verse 15, we read, "On the 7th day, they rose early at dawn and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. Verse 16, and at the 7th time when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for Yahweh has given you the city. The city and all that is in it shall be devoted to Yahweh for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers we sent." That's an interesting announcement, Joshua. All right, shout, kill everybody, but save Rahab. I guess the spies told Joshua what happened, and Joshua said, all right, so, you made the deal with her, but I'm going to honor the deal, and I'm going to tell everyone else to honor the deal. So they circled, they shouted, the city walls fell, and they marched in with their swords, and they started killing people. Verse 23 says, so the young men who had been spies went in and brought Rahab out, along with her father, her mother, her brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought all the kindred out and set them outside the camp of Israel. They burned down the city and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of Yahweh. But Rahab the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, Joshua spared. Her family has lived in Israel ever since, for she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Now look, in verse 24, I think it was. No, verse 23. At the end of verse 23, it says they got Rahab and they set them outside the camp of Israel. You see that? So you get the picture. They rescue Rahab and her little clan there, her extended family, and they set her outside the camp of Israel. And then here's the camp of Israel. Jericho is literally burning. It's smoking. It's on fire. Like you can't go home. And so they're outside the camp of Israel. But then it says in verse 25, it says her family has lived in Israel ever since. So this is a big move. You start out outside the camp of Israel, and now you're in Israel ever since. Now, they weren't Israelites. They were Canaanites. They were foreigners. Jericho was gone. But what we learn is from other parts of the Bible, especially Matthew chapter 1, that there was a man named Salmon. Not salmon, that's the fish. This is spelled differently. It's Salmon. And this guy, Salmon, married Rahab. He's an Israelite. She's a Canaanite. He married her. We don't know who he was. He could have been one of the spies. He could have been a different Israelite. We don't know. We just know that he married her, and that when she got married to Salmon, that she became part of the Israelite people. Which means she took on a new group identity. They taught her about God. They taught her about the Torah, about how to live as a faithful Israelite at that time. This outsider became an insider. She married this man, and together they had a child. And the name of that son was Boaz. And they raised Boaz to be a man of great character and compassion, a very spiritual man. We read about Boaz later in the book of Ruth. Let's go over to the book of Ruth now, chapter 1, verse 7. Boaz became a successful, generous, and compassionate man, a spiritual man. The book of Ruth is really about a woman named Naomi, at least initially. And Naomi was a woman that just had a terrible life. Poor thing. She was married to this guy named Elimelech, and they're farmers, that kind of lifestyle. This is like forever ago, very, very many centuries before Christ. And, they're living off the land, but then there's a famine, so they move to Moab, to this other country. And while they're in Moab, her husband dies. And that's very tragic, but it's the thing that happens. And then Naomi marries off her sons. He finds wives for her sons, so they both have wives. But then her sons both die within 10 years. And she's left there with her 2 daughters-in-law. And she's like, man, my life stinks. You ladies, you should go home. Go back to your families. I got nothing. This is what she says in verse 7 of chapter 1. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, go back each of you to your mother's house. May Yahweh deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Yahweh grant you that you may find security, each of you in the house of your husband. Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. Can you imagine the pain, the suffering, the hopelessness of poor Naomi? She's got nothing. She has no husband. She has no children. She's got no money. She's in a foreign land, and she's like, I'm just going to go home to like where my family comes from and just see how I can survive there. She's lost everyone. Verse 10, they said to her, no, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of Yahweh has turned against me. Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. So you see the scene. Many of you have read this before, have heard the story. When Orpah and Ruth had married into the family, they had switched. They had taken on the new group identity of this new family. But now all the men were dead. All the men were dead. There were 3 men and 3 women. The men have died. And so nobody's married, nobody's related. It's just 3 women that have been related in law, like through marriage. And Naomi's saying to them, look, go back to your family. Go back to your mother's house. They'll take care of you. And, maybe you can get married again. And you can have children, and you can, whatever, have a nice life. It says, but Ruth was different. She clung to her. Let's look at verse 15. Sounds like somebody's clinging to that cell phone. All right, verse 15. So she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not press me to leave you, to turn back from following you. And here come the epic words. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Yahweh do thus to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you. When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. Ladies and gentlemen, that is loyalty. That is loyalty. Ruth had joined this new group, and she wanted to stay. She was taking on a hard life. She could go home, but instead she decided to stay. Naomi didn't have money. Naomi didn't have like some hidden secret fortune somewhere, this was going to be a hard life. And Ruth said, you know what, I'm in. I've already changed my group identity from my original home. I've already joined your family. I'm still in your family. I'm going to stay with you. I know the husband's dead. I know that your husband's dead. I know my brother-in-law's dead, but I'm still here. I'm still part of this group. Take me to your people. They are now my people. That's what Ruth said. That's what it sounds like when you change a group identity, and then you say to yourself, well, maybe I should go back to the old. And then you say, no, be like Ruth. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. This develops. I don't have time to look at all the details. Ruth's a whole book of the Bible, right? Several chapters, but I just summarized it a little bit for you. Ruth eventually meets the son of Rahab. She meets the son of the prostitute. And he's an amazing man. He has fields and a house, and he has servants. He's wealthy, and he says to his servants, Yahweh be with you, when he says hello to them in the morning. He's a man of great spirituality. And she meets him, and she says, oh, can I Can I glean in your fields? Can I just get some food? Like I'll follow behind your harvesters and I'll just pick up what they leave behind. And Boaz says yes, and he tells all his servants, nobody touch her. She's under my protection, right? And she does that, and she brings home all this food to Naomi. Naomi's like, my goodness, where'd you get all this food? And she said, oh, it's from Boaz. She said, oh yeah, I think he's like a relative of my husband who had died. I think Boaz is, like a distant relative, or who knows, like cousin or something. And so at some point, Naomi says to Ruth, she says, I want you to propose to Boaz. I want you to do it in this way. And she explains it's an elaborate plan, risky, and it's in the middle of the night, and he's been drinking. And, I don't want to go into all the details, but it's an elaborate plan. It takes a lot of courage for Ruth to do this. And she goes and she proposes to Boaz. It basically says, would you marry me? And so this is what Boaz said. So let's look at chapter 3. If you could go to chapter 3 with me, verse 10. Here's what Boaz says. He says, may you be blessed by Yahweh, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask, for all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. You see, people had talked about Ruth in the village. You know what a small town village is like? You get one Moabite coming to town, everybody knows. You know what I'm saying? Now, I wish I could develop this more, but the Moabite thing is a big deal. It's a really big deal in the Bible, because the Moabites were really dirty to the Israelites while they were on the way to the land. And I don't want to go into all of it, but there's actually a law that says no Moabite can come into the congregation of the people of God. It's just like a straight up, it's like the only race law in the whole Old Testament. And here's Ruth, hey, nice to meet you. I'm a Moabite woman. And Boaz knows something about outsiders. His mom is the ultimate outsider. Not only a Canaanite, but a prostitute. Right? And so Boaz says, all right, well, there's a legal matter, because there was actually another person who had the right to marry her ahead of him. He says, let me take care of this legal matter, and then I will if it works out, then I will take you as my own. And he does. He handles everything with the law court, which is at the gate of the city in those days. And everything gets squared away, and he comes and he says to her, I will take you as my wife. And he marries Ruth, and together they have a boy, and his name is Obed, who has a son named Jesse, who has a son named David, the great king of Israel. So many generations after David, we get Jesus the Messiah, direct descendant of Ruth the Moabite, direct descendant of Rahab the prostitute. Isn't that gorgeous? How God brings in the outsider, how God says, you know what, that's your group identity, but be part of my family. This is the legacy that we hold today. But I wonder, do you look at yourself as a child of God? Is that really your top level identity? Or are you a golfer who happens to go to church on Sunday? Or are you, a businessman or some other, whatever identity you have? There's so many identities in our world today, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just child of God, being part of God's family, needs to be at the top so that it relativizes everything else and shapes everything else. Look, if there is a God and He has brought you into His family, that is the most important thing in your life. It just is, because of who God is. All right, let's look at one last example. Philippians chapter 3. Ruth had worshipped Chemosh. That was the god of the Moabites. Ruth had lived according to the law of their land, not the law of Moses. She thought differently, she dressed differently, she lived differently, but then she joined Israel and she served Yahweh. She learned the ways of serving Yahweh, and that reinforced her group identity. And I'm sure having an awesome husband like Boaz was super helpful in her learning and then enforcing that lifestyle. All right, let's look at Paul. Philippians chapter 3, verse 4 says, if anyone else has reason to be confident in the flesh, I have more. This is Paul the prideful. Circumcised on the 8th day, a member of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. That's group identity, ladies and gentlemen. That's an enfranchised person saying, I am legit. Right? He's legit. He was born the right way. He was circumcised at the right time. He knows his tribe. He knows his tribe. He's of the tribe of Benjamin. Why do you think he's called Saul? That's the name of the king before David was Saul. Right? If you're of the tribe of Benjamin, you name your kid Saul. It just makes sense, right? And so he's like, and I'm a Pharisee of the strictest sect of my people. I keep all the little dots and the crosses on the T's, the jots and the tittles, I keep it all. As touching the law, blameless. And then something happened. Let me read you a little snippet of it. Acts 9:3, it says, now as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He asked, who are you, Lord? The reply came, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do. Paul found out in a moment that Jesus wasn't a fake Messiah. Jesus wasn't rotting in a grave somewhere. Jesus knocked him off his horse. Jesus blinded his eyes. And Jesus said, hey, you, knock it off. It's unprecedented. Like, we don't have a lot of these kind of things where Jesus is appearing to people and knocking them off their animals. Can you think of another time? Like, it's weird. But here's the thing. Paul had a heart to serve God. He was trying to serve God his hardest. He's like, oh, these darn crazy, deceived Jewish people that are following Jesus, I'm gonna stamp them out. This weird mutation of our beloved religion, I'm gonna get rid of it. And he would show up. He was the Gestapo. He was the government agent that would show up in the night and disappear people. That was Paul. He was doing it because he was serving God. He was serving God. But he just had it wrong. He was just wrong. He thought God would want him to persecute the Christians. Well, then he met Jesus, and he's like, oh, whoops. And he said, well, I guess if Jesus is legitimate, I'm going to have to help the Christians, and I'm going to be a missionary, and I'm going to serve God as hard as I can as a Christian. And that's what he does. He completely turns the other direction, and he does not put a single ounce of pride in his old qualifications. Look at what he says in the next verse there, verse 7. Yet whatever gains I had, these I have come to regard as loss because of Christ. More than that, I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of knowing Jesus Christ my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things, and I regard them as garbage, in order that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but one that comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God based on faith. Paul switched sides. He looked at all of his old accomplishments, the Harvard degree, the valedictorian from high school, the awards from all the different things he did, and he said, you know what? I don't care about any of that. I met Jesus. He's alive. He's the Messiah. I'm going to serve him. That's what he decided. He said, I used to be a Pharisee. That was my group identity. Now I'm somebody that's with Jesus. Call me a Christian if you want. I'm going to go in this direction. It was his identity. It wasn't just something he did once a week. It wasn't something he just, maybe supported financially. No, it was his identity. And he changed the world because of that. What about you? Are you still spending time as a Pharisee or as a Moabite or a Canaanite? In your mind, what's your identity? I mean, look, You may be a Canaanite Christian, but you're a Christian Canaanite. You know what I mean? The Christian has got to come first. And who are you spending your time with? Who are you spending your time with? I'm not saying you can't have Christian friends. I want to be crystal clear about that. I think you should have non-Christian friends in your life. Please, don't get weird on me. I'm just saying that, are you also spending time with Christians? And is that part of your group identity? Because if you're not spending time in developing your relationship with Christians, then you're missing out on this incredible opportunity to transform your mind through group identity. Sunday's not enough. Michael Hendricks, once again, says, group identity has the power to change character because it operates in the fast track on the right spot in the brain. Our automatic response to distress, faster than conscious thought, can be trained by our group identity. Let me state this again, because this concept is countercultural. Our instantaneous reactions to life's circumstances, some of which result in non-Christian behavior, can be transformed by having a joyful, loving community that has a well-developed group identity based in the character of Jesus. Character is revealed by how we act instinctively to our relational surroundings. As our group identity sinks into our hearts, we learn the correct techniques in the next chapter. We will naturally start exhibiting transformed character spontaneously. The people with whom we share joy, love, and belonging change us outside the realm of our direct willpower. If we fail to develop our group identity, our character remains untouched by much of our Christian practice. Our brains are wired to respond to group identity. So I'd like to conclude by saying some affirmations together. Okay? We don't typically do this, but why not? You know? So I've got some affirmations here, and I would like us to say them together, okay? You can remain seating. I don't need you to stand or anything. We don't need to make it too weird, but I'd like to say this together, okay? Are you ready? How about now? Number 1, we are a people who genuinely care about each other. Number 2, we are a people who see what God is building in others. Number 3, we are a people who would rather listen than speak. Ooh, did you just say that? That's a hard one. Number 4, we are a people who remind each other who we really are whenever we forget. Number 5, we are a people who share each other's pain even when we have caused it. Number 6, we are a people who are happy to be together. Number 7, we are a people who create environments of joyful belonging. Number 8, we are a people who value relationships above performance. Number 9, we are a people who are faithful friends even when we have conflict. And number 10, we are a people who have a living hope. That wasn't in the book. I just slipped it in there. You know, you got to be on brand sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Listen to me. You have to think to yourself what kind of people you are. We have to ask, what kind of people are we? What do our people do in this situation? What do our people do in that situation? And it really helps if you're with other people in those situations who can show you how to do things. Sound good? All right, well, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the incredible grace that you give us to join your group, to be able to say that you are our Father, to be able to seek to imitate you as dear children, to be able to call each other brother and sister. We ask that you would help us transform, that you would show us how to transform, that you would bring us closer to you so that we could enjoy your presence and be a good witness of you in the world around us. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.